A dream built on love. Elena Carter stood in the kitchen of Carter's Haven, the restaurant that had been her family's pride for 3 generations. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting golden stripes across the stainless steel counters. Her hands moved with practiced grace as she prepared her grandmother's famous rosemary focaccia. The smell of fresh herbs and warm bread filled the air like a comforting hug. "Perfect as always, my love," a smooth voice said behind her. Elena turned to see Marcus Sullivan, her fiancé of 2 years, leaning against the doorframe. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine with his perfectly styled dark hair and expensive suit. His smile was bright and confident, the kind that made everyone in a room turn to look at him. "You're here early," Elena said, wiping flour from her hands. "I thought you had that big meeting with investors today." Marcus walked over and kissed her forehead. "I wanted to see my talented chef before the day got crazy. Besides, I have exciting news. My restaurant chain is expanding. We're opening 3 new locations this quarter." Elena felt a small knot in her stomach but pushed it away. Marcus's success should make her happy, not worried. "That's wonderful," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "And I was thinking," Marcus continued, picking up one of her handwritten recipe cards, "maybe you could share some of your family recipes with my team. Your grandmother's dishes would be perfect for our upscale locations." Elena gently took the card back. "These recipes are special, Marcus. They're meant for Carter's Haven. They tell our family's story." His smile tightened just slightly. "Of course. I understand. Family tradition and all that." He checked his expensive watch. "I should go. Big day ahead. Love you." "Love you too," Elena replied, but he was already walking away. She pushed away the uncomfortable feeling and returned to her work. Carter's Haven was everything to her. Her grandfather had started it as a small cafe 50 years ago. Her father had expanded it into a full restaurant. And Elena had taken it to new heights with her creative twists on traditional recipes. Every dish told a story. Every meal was made with love. ##the night everything changed. 3 weeks later, Elena was working late, perfecting a new dessert for the spring menu. The restaurant had closed hours ago, but she loved the quiet of the empty kitchen. It was her thinking space, her creative sanctuary. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Can't make dinner tomorrow. Investor meeting ran long. Rain check." Elena sighed. This was the 3rd time this week. She understood he was busy building his empire. But lately it felt like she was planning a wedding alone. She typed back a quick okay, and returned to her chocolate soufflé. Around midnight, she finally locked up and headed home. As she drove through the quiet streets, she thought about her wedding plans. 6 months until she became Mrs. Sullivan. 6 months until she merged her life with Marcus's glamorous world of business deals and society events. Sometimes she wondered if she truly fit into that world. The call came at 3 in the morning. "Miss Carter? This is Fire Chief Rodriguez. I'm sorry to inform you that Carter's Haven is on fire. We need you to come down immediately." Elena's world tilted. She barely remembered throwing on clothes and racing to the restaurant. When she arrived, flames were shooting through the roof. Firefighters sprayed water from massive hoses, but it looked hopeless. Her family's legacy was being consumed before her eyes. "No, no, no," she whispered, trying to run forward. Strong arms held her back. "You can't go in there, miss," a firefighter said gently. Elena watched helplessly as everything she loved turned to smoke and ash. Her grandmother's recipes. Her father's photographs on the walls. The kitchen where 3 generations had cooked with love. All of it was disappearing into the hungry flames. Marcus arrived an hour later. He wrapped his arms around her as she sobbed against his chest. "It's going to be okay," he murmured. "We'll rebuild. I'll help you." Through her tears, Elena felt a flicker of hope. At least she had Marcus. At least she wasn't alone. #the investigation begins. The fire chief's report came back 2 weeks later. The fire had been deliberately set. Someone had poured accelerant around the kitchen and lit it. This wasn't an accident. This was arson. Who would do this? Elena asked Detective Morrison, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. Carter's Haven never hurt anyone. We were part of this community. That's what we're trying to find out, the detective said. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt your business? Elena shook her head, numb with shock. The insurance company was investigating too, which meant the money to rebuild was frozen. Her savings were nearly gone. Staff members she'd known for years were now jobless because of her. The guilt was crushing. Marcus became distant. His calls grew shorter. His visits less frequent. When Elena asked him about helping with the rebuild, he always had an excuse. Too busy with his own restaurants. Tied up with investors. Important meetings he couldn't miss. Then came the newspaper article that destroyed what was left of her world. ## the betrayal revealed. Elena was drinking her morning coffee in her tiny apartment when she saw it. The headline jumped off the page. Sullivan's restaurant chain unveils exclusive new menu featuring historic family recipes. Her hands trembled as she read. The article praised Marcus for bringing authentic, traditional dishes to his upscale restaurants. It described recipes that sounded exactly like her grandmother's rosemary focaccia, her father's signature pasta, her own secret desserts. The ones she'd never shared with anyone outside her family. The ones that had been stored in her recipe book at Carter's Haven. Elena's phone rang. It was her lawyer, Mr. Patterson, who had helped her father with the restaurant's legal matters for decades. Elena, I'm so sorry, but I thought you should know. I was just contacted by Sullivan's attorney. They're claiming that the recipes they're using are Marcus's original creations. They say if you try to claim otherwise, they'll sue you for defamation. But those are my family's recipes. Elena's voice cracked. He stole them. I know, dear. But proving it will be very difficult. Your recipe books were destroyed in the fire. Without documentation, it's your word against his. And Marcus has significant legal resources. After hanging up, Elena sat in stunned silence. Then understanding crashed over her like a wave of ice water. Marcus had planned this. All of it. He'd asked for her recipes months ago. When she refused, he'd found another way. The fire hadn't been random. Someone had been hired to destroy the evidence. Her family's restaurant, her grandmother's handwritten cards, everything that could prove those recipes were hers, had been deliberately burned. And Marcus, the man she'd loved and trusted, had orchestrated it all. ## the public humiliation. Elena confronted him at his flagship restaurant. She walked past the host station, ignoring the protests, and found Marcus at a table with investors. He looked annoyed when he saw her. Elena, this isn't a good time. You burned down my restaurant, she said, her voice shaking. You stole my family's recipes and destroyed the evidence. The table went silent. Marcus's jaw clenched. Then to her shock he laughed. Is this about the menu? Darling, you're being paranoid. He turned to his investors with an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, gentlemen. My ex-fiancé is having trouble accepting that we've ended our relationship. Ex-fiancé? Elena repeated, stunned. Marcus stood up, his face cold and hard. Gone was the charming man she thought she knew. Let's be honest, Elena. You were never in my league. A small-time chef with a failing family restaurant? I needed your recipes to give my chain authenticity, and you were too sentimental to share them willingly. So yes, I took what I needed. You burned down my restaurant. Elena's voice rose. You destroyed my family's legacy. Prove it, Marcus said softly, dangerously. Oh wait, you can't. Because all your precious evidence went up in smoke. Now leave before I call security. You're embarrassing yourself. The investors were staring at her with pity and discomfort. Other diners had turned to watch the scene. Elena felt hot shame flooding her face. Security guards were already approaching. She left, her dignity in tatters, while Marcus returned to his business meeting as if she'd been nothing more than a minor interruption. ## the long fall down. The news spread quickly. Marcus's version of events became the accepted truth. He painted Elena as an obsessed ex who couldn't handle their breakup. He suggested her restaurant had failed due to her poor management, and the fire had been convenient timing for an insurance claim that she was now being denied. Without proof, no one believed her accusations. Her reputation in the culinary world was destroyed. Restaurant owners who'd once competed for her talent now wouldn't return her calls. Cooking schools where she'd taught weekend classes canceled her contracts. Even her friends began to distance themselves, uncomfortable with the scandal. Her savings ran out. She lost her apartment and moved into a cheap motel. She applied for jobs at restaurants, but Marcus's influence was far-reaching. No reputable establishment would hire her. 6 months after the fire, Elena Carter was washing dishes at Murphy's Diner, a rundown cafe on the wrong side of town. Her hands, once celebrated for creating culinary masterpieces, were now red and cracked from harsh soap and hot water. She wore a stained apron and kept her head down, invisible and forgotten. The other staff barely spoke to her. They knew she'd fallen from somewhere higher, and in their world failure was contagious. Elena didn't blame them. She'd become a ghost of the woman she used to be. At night, lying on the lumpy motel bed, she sometimes couldn't believe this was her life. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? She'd lost her family's legacy, her career, her reputation, and the man she'd loved. She'd lost herself. The worst part was the helplessness. Marcus had won completely. His restaurants were thriving on recipes stolen from her family. He'd moved on to dating a famous actress. Meanwhile, Elena scrubbed other people's dirty dishes and tried to remember what hope felt like. She'd stopped cooking entirely. The joy was gone. Creating food had once been her passion, her art, her connection to her family's history. Now it just reminded her of everything she'd lost. ## the mysterious stranger. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that matched Elena's mood perfectly. The diner was nearly empty except for a few regulars nursing coffee and avoiding the weather. Elena was in the back, elbow deep in greasy dishwater, when Murphy called out, "Carter, get out here and help with table 7. Elena dried her hands and grabbed a notepad. The waitress, Sarah, had called in sick, leaving Murphy short-staffed. Elena wasn't supposed to work the floor, but she needed this job too badly to argue. Table 7 held a single man. Even from across the room he stood out. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. His dark hair had distinguished silver at the temples. He was reading something on his phone, his expression intense and focused. "What can I get you?" Elena asked, keeping her eyes on her notepad. "Coffee black," he said without looking up. Then he paused. "And whatever the special is." His voice was deep and commanding, the kind of voice that was used to being obeyed. Elena wrote down the order and turned to leave. "Wait," he said suddenly. She turned back. He was looking at her now, and his eyes were striking, a clear gray that seemed to see too much. "Do you cook?" Elena tensed. "I wash dishes." "That's not what I asked." He gestured to her hands. "Those are a chef's hands. I can see the old burns, the calluses in specific places. You've spent years at a professional stove." Elena pulled her sleeves down self-consciously. "I used to cook. Not anymore." "Why not?" The question was direct, almost invasive. Elena felt a flash of anger. "Because life happened. Now, do you want the special or not?" Something flickered in his expression. It might have been understanding or sympathy. "The special is fine. Thank you." Elena brought him the meatloaf, which looked as depressing as everything else Murphy served. The man ate without complaint, though she noticed he left half of it. When she brought the check, he left a $100 bill for a $12 meal. "The service was adequate, but the food was terrible," he said, standing up. "You should be cooking, not hiding in a kitchen washing dishes. Talent like yours is wasted here." Before Elena could respond, he was gone, leaving her staring at the generous tip and wondering how a complete stranger could see something in her that she'd forgotten existed. She didn't know it yet, but that encounter had just changed everything. The mysterious man's name was Alexander Drake, and he was about to offer her something she thought she'd lost forever. A chance at redemption, revenge, and perhaps, if she was brave enough to reach for it, love. #Burning for Redemption Part 2. Rising from the Flames. #The unexpected offer. Alexander Drake returned to the diner exactly 1 week later. Elena was wiping down tables when she saw him walk in. He was dressed more casually this time, But there was still an air of power and confidence around him that didn't fit with Murphy's grimy atmosphere. He sat at the same table and waited until Elena approached. "Coffee black?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Actually, I came to talk to you," Alexander said. "Sit down, please." "I'm working." "Murphy," Alexander called out to the owner. "I'm hiring Miss Carter for a private consultation. She'll be unavailable for the next hour." He placed $500 bills on the table. "This should cover her time and any lost business." Murphy's eyes went wide. He grabbed the money and nodded enthusiastically. "Take all the time you need." Elena had no choice but to sit down. She crossed her arms defensively. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a job," Alexander said simply. "Executive chef at one of my restaurants." Elena laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Is this some kind of joke? You don't know anything about me." "I know everything about you, Elena Carter." Alexander pulled out a folder and opened it. "Graduated top of your class from the Culinary Institute. Won 3 regional cooking competitions before you were 25. Took your family's struggling restaurant and turned it into one of the most beloved establishments in the city. Created a waiting list that was 3 months long." Elena's throat tightened. "That's ancient history." "I also know about Marcus Sullivan," Alexander continued, his voice harder now. "I know he stole your recipes, destroyed your restaurant, and ruined your reputation. I know the culinary world turned its back on you because they believed his lies." "Then you know I'm unemployable," Elena said quietly. "So why are you here?" Alexander leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "Because I believe in your talent. Because I've eaten at Sullivan's restaurants, and I can taste the soul that was stolen from those dishes. Because you deserve a second chance." "What's in it for you?" Elena asked suspiciously. "Nobody does something like this for free." "You're right. I have my own reasons." Alexander closed the folder. "Marcus Sullivan's success bothers me. Not because I'm jealous, but because it's built on theft and lies. I want to see him brought down. And I think you're the person to do it." Elena's heart began to beat faster. "Revenge. Justice," Alexander corrected. "There's a difference. I'm offering you the resources to rebuild your career, prove your recipes were stolen, and expose Marcus for what he really is. But it won't be easy. It will take time, hard work, and courage. Are you interested?" Elena's mind was spinning. This felt too good to be true. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Alexander's expression changed, becoming distant and sad. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to have everything taken from you by someone you trusted. I couldn't get my revenge, but maybe I can help you get yours." Elena studied him carefully. There was pain in his eyes, old and deep. Whatever had happened to him had left scars. She recognized that pain because she carried it too. "What do I have to do?" she asked. "Start by believing in yourself again," Alexander said. "Then come work for me. I own Drake's Table among other restaurants. You'll train in my kitchen, rediscover your passion, and create new dishes that will remind the world what real talent looks like. When you're ready, we'll expose Marcus and reclaim what he stole." It sounded impossible. It sounded like a dream. But Elena had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Alexander smiled, and it transformed his serious face. "Good. You start Monday." "Oh, and Elena? Leave Murphy's immediately. You'll be on my payroll starting today. Consider this your advance." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $10,000. Elena stared at it, tears suddenly burning in her eyes. It was more money than she'd seen in months. It was hope in paper form. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked again, her voice breaking. Alexander stood up and looked down at her with something that might have been respect. "Because talented people deserve to rise, and cruel people deserve to fall. And because I suspect you and I are more alike than you realize." Then he was gone, leaving Elena holding the check and wondering if she'd just been given a miracle or made a deal with the devil. ## the first day. Drake's Table was everything Murphy's Diner wasn't. Located in the heart of the city's upscale restaurant district, it was elegant and sophisticated, with crystal chandeliers and walls painted in rich burgundy. The kitchen was a chef's paradise, with top-of-the-line equipment and a staff that moved with professional precision. Elena felt completely out of place. She stood in the kitchen doorway on Monday morning, wearing the new chef's coat Alexander had sent to her hotel room. It was crisp and white with her name embroidered over the pocket. Chef Elena Carter. Seeing her name like that, official and proud, made her want to cry. "You must be Elena," a warm voice said. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and laugh lines approached. "I'm Christine, head chef here. Alexander told me you'd be joining us." "I don't know what he told you about me," Elena began nervously, "but I should be honest. I haven't really cooked in months. I might be rusty." Christine smiled. "Alexander told me you've been through hell. He also told me you're one of the most talented chefs he's ever encountered. So how about we start fresh? Today you observe. Tomorrow we'll see what you can do." The day passed in a blur. Elena watched the kitchen staff work with smooth efficiency. She saw dishes being prepared that were technically perfect but somehow soulless. Everything was beautiful and precise, but it lacked passion. At the end of the shift, Alexander appeared. "Walk with me," he said. They left the restaurant and walked through the city streets as evening fell. "What did you think?" he asked. "Your team is skilled," Elena said carefully. But the food lacks heart," Alexander finished. "I know. That's why I need you. I can hire technical perfection anywhere. What I can't buy is what you have. The ability to put emotion and story into food." They stopped at a small park and sat on a bench. The city lights were starting to twinkle in the gathering darkness. "Tell me about your first memory of cooking," Alexander said. Elena hesitated, then found herself speaking. "I was 6 years old. My grandmother taught me to make her focaccia bread. She said every good thing she'd ever experienced was baked into that recipe. The herbs represented her garden in Italy. The olive oil was from her wedding day when her husband gave her a bottle as a gift. The salt was from tears of joy when my father was born. She taught me that cooking isn't just about following instructions. It's about infusing food with love and memory." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "That's beautiful. And that's what Marcus stole. Not just recipes but stories, memories, love. How do I fight against someone who has so much power?" Elena asked. "He's won already." "He's won a battle," Alexander corrected. "But the war isn't over. Marcus built his empire on your foundation. That makes it unstable. All we have to do is prove the foundation was stolen, and everything he's built will collapse." "How?" "By making you so successful that people start asking questions," Alexander said. "When you create dishes that are clearly superior to what Sullivan's restaurants serve, food critics and journalists will notice. They'll wonder why your food tastes authentic while his tastes copied. We'll plant seeds of doubt, and then we'll water them with evidence." Elena felt a spark of hope. "You've thought this through." "I've had time to plan," Alexander said. He turned to look at her, and in the streetlight, his face looked younger and more vulnerable. "I told you I had my own reasons for wanting to help you. The truth is, 10 years ago, I was in a similar situation. My former business partner stole my restaurant concepts and recipes. He used my ideas to build an empire while I nearly lost everything. By the time I recovered and rebuilt, he died in a car accident. I never got my revenge. I never got justice." "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "Don't be sorry. Be successful. Be brilliant. Show the world what real talent looks like. That's the best revenge there is." They sat in companionable silence, two wounded people who'd found an unexpected alliance. #rediscovering passion. The next 3 months transformed Elena. Under Christine's patient guidance and Alexander's demanding standards, she began to cook again. First her hands shook. Her timing was off. She'd lost confidence and skill from months of not practicing. But slowly muscle memory returned. The rhythm of the kitchen became familiar again. And something else started to happen. The anger and pain she'd been carrying began to flow into her cooking. Every dish became a statement. Every plate was proof that she hadn't been destroyed. Alexander pushed her hard. He'd appear in the kitchen unannounced, taste her food, and give brutally honest feedback. "This sauce is safe," he'd say. "Where's the risk? Where's the passion? This dish is technically perfect, he'd critique. But it doesn't tell me a story. Make me feel something. It was frustrating and challenging, but it was also exactly what Elena needed. He wasn't treating her like a broken thing that needed gentle handling. He was treating her like the chef she used to be, the chef she could become again. One night, after everyone else had gone home, Elena was experimenting with a new dessert. Alexander found her in the kitchen, surrounded by ingredients, her face flushed with concentration. "What are you making?" he asked. "Something I've been thinking about," Elena said. She plated the dessert carefully, a deconstructed chocolate cake with lavender cream and candied orange peel. "It's inspired by my grandmother's garden. She used to say that bitter and sweet together taught you about life." Alexander tasted it. His eyes closed. When he opened them, there was something raw and real in his expression. "That's it," he said quietly. "That's what I've been waiting for. That's your voice." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in a year, she felt like herself again. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Alexander set down his fork and looked at her directly. "Elena, I need you to understand something. What started as a plan for revenge has become something more. You're not just a tool to bring down Marcus. You're an incredible chef. You're going to be successful because you deserve it, not because of some scheme. But we're still going to expose him, right?" Elena asked. The anger still burned inside her, maybe even hotter now that she was remembering what she'd lost. "Yes," Alexander promised. "But we're going to do it right. Your success will be legitimate. Your reputation will be earned. And when Marcus falls, it will be because the truth came out, not because we destroyed him with lies. We're better than he is." Elena nodded slowly. Alexander was right. She didn't want to become the villain in her own story. She wanted justice, not just revenge. "There's something else you should know," Alexander said, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "The reason I know so much about Marcus, the reason I've been able to help you. I've been investigating him for months, even before I met you." "Why?" "Because his success never made sense. His restaurants appeared seemingly overnight with recipes that food critics called authentically traditional. No chef creates that many authentic dishes that quickly. I suspected he was stealing recipes, but I couldn't prove it. Then I heard about your fire, read between the lines of the news articles, and realized what had really happened." Elena felt a chill. "You've been planning this all along." "I've been looking for the truth," Alexander corrected. "And I found it in you. Not just the evidence I needed, but—" He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "But someone who understands what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trusted." There was something in his tone that made Elena look at him more closely. In the soft kitchen lighting, she could see the lines of stress around his eyes, the way his jaw was tight with controlled emotion. "Your business partner," she said slowly. "It wasn't just business, was it?" Alexander's expression became carefully blank. "No. She was my fiancée." The revelation hung in the air between them. They were more alike than Elena had realized. Both of them had been betrayed by the people they'd loved most. Both had lost everything. Both were fighting their way back from destruction. "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "Don't be. Use it. Let it make you stronger." Alexander straightened his shoulders, his composure returning. "We have work to do. There's a prestigious culinary competition in 3 months. The Grand Prix of Cuisine. Marcus enters every year and usually places in the top 3. I think you should enter." Elena's eyes widened. "That's one of the most elite competitions in the country. Only established chefs with reputations get invitations." "You'll get an invitation," Alexander said with quiet confidence. "Trust me. And when you compete, the culinary world will see what real talent looks like. They'll see the difference between copied recipes and authentic creativity." "What if I fail?" "You won't." Alexander placed his hand over hers, and Elena felt a jolt at the contact. His hand was warm and solid, anchoring her. "You're going to remind everyone why you're extraordinary." Looking into his gray eyes, Elena almost believed him. More than that, she felt something shifting in her chest. Gratitude, yes. Respect, certainly. But underneath it all was something else, something that made her heart beat faster. She pulled her hand away, suddenly nervous. I should clean up. It's late. Elena, Alexander said as she turned away. She looked back. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens, whatever we face it together. That's my promise to you. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. As she cleaned up the kitchen, she was very aware of Alexander's presence, the way he moved, the sound of his voice when he took a phone call in the corner. This was supposed to be about revenge, about justice, about reclaiming her career and exposing Marcus. But Elena was beginning to suspect it was becoming about something much more complicated and dangerous. It was becoming about Alexander Drake, the mysterious man who'd saved her from drowning and might be stealing her heart in the process. ## The plan takes shape. The invitation to the Grand Prix of Cuisine arrived 2 weeks later. Elena stared at the elegant envelope with her name written in calligraphy. Inside was an official invitation to compete in the most prestigious culinary competition in North America. How did you do this? She asked Alexander when he appeared in the kitchen that afternoon. I have friends in the right places, he said with a slight smile. And your reputation isn't as dead as you thought. People remember what you used to be. This is your chance to remind them. The competition was structured in 3 rounds. First round, create a dish using mystery ingredients. Second round, prepare your signature dish. Third round, create a complete 3-course menu that tells a story. Marcus will be competing, Alexander warned. He enters every year. It's part of his image as a serious chef, even though everyone knows his staff does most of the cooking. Good, Elena said, and she was surprised by the steel in her own voice. Let him see what he tried to destroy. Over the next weeks, Elena prepared intensely. She developed new recipes, tested combinations, and pushed herself harder than ever before. Christine helped her refine techniques. The kitchen staff became her cheerleaders. And Alexander was always there, tasting, critiquing, encouraging. One evening, Alexander took Elena to a high-end grocery store after hours. He'd rented the entire place for private practice with mystery ingredients. The first round is about thinking on your feet, he explained. You'll have access to a full pantry, but the main ingredients will be things you've never worked with before. You need to be able to create something exceptional with whatever you're given. He'd arranged for unusual ingredients. Sea urchin, Buddha's hand citrus, black garlic, edible flowers Elena had never seen before. She had to create a dish in 60 minutes. Elena's hands moved instinctively, her mind racing. She made a delicate sea urchin mousse with Buddha's hand zest, served over black garlic crostini and garnished with the exotic flowers. It was strange and beautiful and completely original. Alexander tasted it and smiled. That's competition-winning food. You're ready. But as they cleaned up together, working side by side in the empty store, something shifted. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same dish. They both froze. Elena, Alexander said softly, I need to tell you something. Her heart was pounding. What? This isn't just about revenge anymore. At least not for me. He turned to face her fully. I started this to bring down Marcus. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a tool for justice and started